BOJ is not in a rush, but as Ueda, the governor of the central bank, said today in Parliament, is that really the Bank of Japan is on course to tighten, normalize monetary policy further. The question is, of course, just how quickly. And here, it looks likely that will take their time, because what we saw with the last rate hike was, of course, extreme market volatility, and parliamentarians have questioned the BOJ about this. And I don't think there's the appetite really to test the waters imminently again. So the BOJ might actually wait until early next year before moving again, tightening further. But the overall trajectory really is towards more monetary tightening in Japan.
Let's not let the BOJ off the hook here, because it was twin factors, wasn't it, that caused the market rout, just to be clear?
Of course, yes. We can assign, some greater weight maybe to the U.S. and global factors than to Japan. But you're right. It's both of those. And that's because the BOJ surprised markets. Remember, going into the meeting, the market had not expected or priced in a rate hike, and the BOJ surprised the market. So it's not necessarily that surprising that you get a big market reaction. But markets have also calmed down since. And I do think that BOJ's takeaway will just be, look, we didn't do anything wrong here. Interest rates need to go up. They're still very accommodative, but maybe we need to flag a little bit better before we actually push rates higher, just to prepare the ground a little bit. So I think there's an evaluation of the communication strategy rather than the overall necessity to actually raise interest rates.
Frederic, this is where it gets interesting again around the commentary from Ueda today, because he's saying that the market, global markets remain unstable. As you've just mentioned, they have calmed down. So what does he see that the rest of us are not necessarily seeing at this point?
Well, I think we would just point to the fact that, the dollar has retraced some of its falls, for example, or we've seen interest rate expectations stabilize. Equity markets have come back up. So I do think a lot of the volatility that we've seen early in August, I think, has certainly dissipated. And I think the governor is taking some kind of confidence from that. But other than that, also, the cyclical indicators in terms of economic growth in the U.S. have not further deteriorated. In fact, anything, what sparked market concern was that weak employment number that we saw for July. And that now has been superseded by other data, suggests actually U.S. economy is slowing, certainly, but it's not falling off the cliff. And so I think when central bankers look at the world, they kind of think markets have gotten ahead of themselves a little bit, not just in Japan, by the way, but in the U.S. as well and elsewhere, that really central bankers don't see a huge change in the economic cyclical state of the global economy between now and just 2 or 3 months ago.
Yeah, Frederic, I want to just also check in on just, Japanese corporates who have posted what looked like record quarterly profits then. I mean, could the yen's rebound then? Yes, right now around that 145 mark, but initially we had even seen it at around 141. Could that be cause of concern for how sustainable some of those earnings growth in the picture could actually be around Japan overall?
I think that's a very, very important point. Now, to some extent, the BOJ and the Japanese population at large have been concerned about yen weakness, as you remember, and therefore, there was some pressure on the BOJ to actually normalize policy. Now that the yen has actually retraced some of that weakness, actually, the BOJ needs to be worried about the other side, which is too much strength in the yen. Because if the yen continues to drift lower, approach 125, 130, say, then a lot of that inflationary impulse that we saw from a weaker yen will dissipate. And that, of course, would be not exactly helpful to bring inflation back to 2% target. So I think you're right. The BOJ will not necessarily want to see precipitous yen strength. And that's why we actually think the BOJ is going to wait until next year to tighten further, not this year, just because they want to see where the FX actually settles. They don't want to add with another hike here and just push the yen lower. That is strengthen the yen too much in the very near term.